tengo una fe muy maravillosa en mi mente. Así la defino yo.
De nosotros se puede decir que estamos un poco locos. Y la verdad es que probablemente lo estemos. Decidimos tomar el riesgo y comprar esta casa a bajo costo. Vimos en ella una oportunidad para poder desarrollar todas nuestras ideas más brillantes y alocadas. Aquí atrás, como están viendo, están trabajando en lo que será el local de comida rápida que también le entregaremos a nuestra amiga Rosa. Porque no solamente le estamos entregando a Rosa una vivienda con todas las comodidades y ajustada a sus necesidades, sino que también pensamos en darle herramientas financieras y sabemos que va a echarle muchas ganas y le va a encantar.
Estamos en la cocina, ya hemos encamisado lo que son las paredes y estamos colocando la cerámica. Esto va a quedar demasiado lindo. Vamos a ver los avances del patio, cómo vamos con esto. ¡Hey! ¿Qué pasó aquí? Vamos a trabajar con razón.
Se nos acaba de ocurrir un gran plan. Traeremos a nuestra querida Rosa a trabajar con nosotros como parte del voluntariado, entregando cafecito o aguas. Es para solamente hacerla creer que está trabajando para otra familia, pero estará trabajando para su propia casita, una gran bendición para ella y para todos nosotros cuando la veamos acá.
Ay, qué lindo, es aquí.
Aquí es.
No, fino.
Tenemos una cómplice porque se supone que ella no puede ni siquiera sospechar de que la casa y todo esto es para ella. Así que una de nuestras voluntarias se va a hacer pasar por la beneficiaria y pues para que no haya ningún tipo de duda ni sospecha. Y ya hemos hablado con el equipo de que a nadie se le puede escapar nada y tienen que tratarla como una voluntaria más.
Muy agradecida por estar aquí ayudando y colaborando aquí también con todos nosotros. Muy agradecida porque estoy participando aquí, colaborando también, porque yo nada más no puedo irme a visitar, no, yo también quiero colaborar porque yo también soy discapacitada y me siento muy fuerte, muy segura de mí misma para poder participar aquí y lo que necesiten yo misma soy. Bueno, ¿vieron qué rico va a quedar ese café para mis voluntarios y mis trabajadores? Que esos muchachos son muy echados para adelante, en el nombre de Jesús. Acá voy cerrando y esperaremos el café. Acá, mira. Tan lindo, que Dios me los bendiga. Este es para ustedes con mucho cariño de parte de Rosa Pacheco. Véngate. Ya está listo, lo hizo Rosa. Wow, me quedó bien, ¿o yo? ¿Oíste? Me pasé la prueba, ¿sabes?
Quedó muy bueno.
Thank you very much. ¿Cómo no, mi corazón bello? Ah, yo soy así, oíste, papito, mamita, corazón, con mucho cariño. Mucho cariño con Rosa Pacheco.
verdad que hemos equipado esta tienda, este negocio de comida rápida, con todo lo necesario para que ella pueda superarse y pueda salir adelante.
¿Qué te motivó a estar acá en River?
Bueno, el servir,
El voluntariado.
Estar aquí, ayudar.
Dispuestos a bendecir a esta familia que viene adelante a recibir este
Y esta
regalo.
bendición, ¿verdad?
Claro.
Es hora de nuestro Señor
Claro.
Jesucristo. Eso sí
Sí.
es verdad.
Porque esto nos llena el
Wow.
corazón, el alma, la vida, todo.
Qué bien, qué lindo.
Excelente.
Claro, y después que te conocí me motivó los otros 3 días que viniste a servir el café.
Gracias.
Ok, les voy a contar algo, pero quiero mantener el secreto porque
Con ética.
con ética. ¿Y qué pasa? Que esta casa es para Rosa y ella no sabe. Esta casa es para Rosa.
No puede ser, de verdad.
Esta es la casa de Rosa Pacheco
No puede ser.
y ella no sabe.
Nada, tú sabes, mía.
Pero le vamos a dar la sorpresa. Le damos a la sorpresa. Nosotros tres le damos a la sorpresa. ¿Está conmigo?
Sí, sí.
¿Le damos a la sorpresa? ¿Me da la mano?
¿Cómo no?
¿Sí? ¿Le damos la sorpresa? Las llaves con la carta y las llaves de la casa. Se va a bajar Stephanie con el ramo de rosas. Y en el ramo de rosas vamos a meter una carta. Dentro de la carta van a estar las llaves. Se bajan rapidito, caminan hacia Rosa y le entregan el ramo de flores con las llaves de la casa. ¿Bien? ¿Están conmigo? ¿Bien?
Mamá, mucho cuidado porque yo con emoción que estoy
Ven acá, Rosa.
Ay, yo voy a entrevistar.
Lo que pasa es que Rosa va a entrevistar a la persona especial que va a recibir esta bendición. Vamos a contar desde 10.
Ay, mamadita, mamá. Ay, gracias, Dios. Mamita, mamita, gracias. Dios mío, gracias a todos, señores. Muchas gracias.
Es de tu casa, mi amor.
Mamita.
Cuidado. Médico. Ya que te entiendes. Toma agua. Toma agua.
Gracias.
Toma agua. Respira, toma agua. Respira, toma agua.
Me engañó. Me engañó. Dios me los bendiga. Gracias,
Amén.
Dios, Señor Jesucristo. Gracias, Dios mío. Casa, mi casita, mía, bien bonita. Mi casita, cariñito, mi casita. Mira mis coroticos.
¿Tú cocinas rico, Rosa?
Sabroso, te voy a invitar a almorzar.
Bueno, Mateo, dale.
Mira, mis coroticos. Naguara, ya que mira mi nevera, Jacqueline, mira mi coroto, Jacqueline, mi cocina. Permiso. Mira mi closet para meter mi ropita que la metí en maleta, ¿te acuerdas?
Sí, velo, revísalo, mami, ábrelo.
Mira los ganchitos para meter mi ropita, ¿ves? Mira, ¿ves? Mira las toallas. Que Dios me los bendiga, me le dé vida y salud. Ahora un aire bien bonito. Nunca había tenido un aire, nunca había tenido un aire. Nunca había tenido un aire acondicionado. Yo vi cuando me senté aquí, yo decía, Naguará, el lujo que esa señora, mira, y para bañarme, ¿ves? Los discapacitados nos agarramos de aquí.
Entonces te pusimos tu lavamanos bajito, mira. ¿Para qué?
No era para mí. Yo decía, esa señora así es chiquita, decía yo. Ella es chiquita. Todo tan bello, todo tan bonito. Gracias, Dios, gracias. Gracias, Dios mío.
Este es el cuarto de Stephanie. Cuando quieras venir, Stephanie.
Te quedas aquí conmigo, mami. Yo. Usted es bien lindo, papi. Dios lo bendiga. Mira, ma. Mira, ma. Que lavadora para lavar mi cubrecama, mamá.
Negocio,
No vi el negocio.
¿Tú no has visto? ¿No has visto? El negocio de la
Yo decía la...
Vamos a esperar. Sí, vamos a ver.
hace rato.
Yo no sabía, mami. Mira, ma. A la orden. A la orden. Rosa, mamá, mira. Gracias por tanto esfuerzo. Gracias por valorarme. Te han invitado a mi casa. Ración de papa frita. Aros de cebolla. Ración de pequeño. Hamburguesa especial. De Oli Rosa, o sea, yo.
That is your seed. That is your seed. That's why I always say, though we don't announce it continually, even in this moment, we have many of these dreams. What we were doing in Cuba, we finished it, we'll show you soon. There are other things that we're doing very similar to this in Chiapas. Whether we show it or not, if we don't show it all together, this is all being done. And that's what a church should do, which is to sow and give. As you might have seen, we bought her home. We bought it. We sent the resources. We renovated it completely. We paid for the labor. We gave them work tools. And this has to do with not just giving a fish, but teaching how to fish as well, right? We said not only are we going to bless you once, but we're going to give you a business so you don't have to go back to the streets, to the stoplights. So we gave her back that dignity, right? It's marvelous. When on top of blessing someone with a home that she would never be able to have on her own, we were able to give her dignity. So that is your seed. That's what you have sown. And it's moving, of course. This is church. Thank you, people. Thank you for sowing. Thank you for giving. And to those that are on the other side, thank you so much. It's so moving. Man, is it moving. Well, are we ready? Let's dry our tears. Today's message is amongst those that I have once preached, and it has a very special place in my heart. It's the message, it's the last message that I would preach to my grandchildren. If I had to preach one last message, and still my mind outlives my body, and I'm still fine, I think this would be the last message. In fact, it was one of the first. I thought there was no better occasion than Father's Day to remember it and bring it back to us. Those of us that once grew up in a church or a congregation, drawing sketches on the pews, drawing on the hymn book, I think we all had a moment where a preacher impacted us for the first time. Back then, there was no Sunday school where the children would be sent to a different place. No, we all had to be there, and we would get bored. The great majority of times, we would get bored until one day somebody came and touched us. And through the dozens and dozens of boring sermons, there's always one that calls to our attention as an adolescent, or at least in my case. I remember that moment in my times as an adolescent. There were never guests that would come to our congregation. You could spend an entire lifetime in the church pews without realizing that other churches existed around the planet. We thought that we were the only ones that were saved. We would always say, such a big heaven for so few people. On top of it all, heaven was still working on its installations to receive us. There were 50 of us that would go to heaven. It didn't occur to anyone that they would admit strangers into paradise or people from other liberal congregations. But one day, the local pastor, had the idea, almost a crazy idea, of inviting a guest to bring the word. Well, stranger to us, but I'm sure one of his friends. It's been almost 45 years, and I can still see him arriving. He was extremely thin, the gentleman. He carried a black suitcase with steel edging and a trombone and a Creole guitar, obviously in its case. Before exposing his sermon, he asked for a place to pray on his own. Our pastor offered our humid basement. It was the best that we could offer. And after some monotonous hymns that we sang, very boring, the small man emerged from the depths of our basement. He stood before the pulpit and he said, "I'm going to give you guys a song." And then, with his trombone, he played "How Great Thou Art." The special effect comes with the offering. And then, the atmosphere was literally electrified just with that. No one accompanied him. It was just him and his trombone, but he would come down with his trombone to walk through the temple. And you would get goosebumps. You would get literal goosebumps. But that was just the beginning. The man put away the trombone after playing "How Great Thou Art." So then he grabbed his Creole guitar, and I remember he said something like, "Before I preach, I want to give you another song." This time he sung it because he also sung, and that's when it happened. Generally speaking, preachers see without observing. It's usually advised in public speaking to look at a fixed point when you preach. You don't look at a specific person so that no one can distract you. If you start to look one by one, you can stumble upon someone that's yawning like a hippopotamus. It doesn't happen here. It happens in the second service. Someone that's looking at their phone, someone that gets up to go to the bathroom. So it is advised to look without observing. This preacher began his song looking at each of the 53 members of the church, each and every one of us. I don't remember that second song that he sang in its totality, but the first time, or at least what he repeated after the bridge, the verse, I remember the first part of it. He would say, "I know you're in crisis, your eyes say so." I don't remember any other part As hard as I try, I can't remember it, but I do remember, I know you're in a crisis. Your eyes tell me so. And the song said something like, the Lord would wash each tear that falls from our eyes. But the surprising part is that he looked at each person that was seated in that church for the totality of the song. And at one moment, he rotates on his heels and he looks at the orchestra. Back then, this humble servant was attempting to play the drums in a commendable act or attempt of music. I almost don't do it anymore. Well, I don't. The man looked at me. I was behind the drum set. It wasn't like this one. It was a much more improvised set. But he looked at me and observed me, as if he looked straight into my soul and uncovered me. And I had that fear that you sometimes feel when a pastor looks at you and you think that he knows everything. You might say, well, what do you mean everything? Well, yeah, everything. One day I'm going to try it. I'm going to say, I know everything. And you'll see everybody, no one will remain here. And he's saying, I know you're in a crisis. Your eyes tell me so. As if he were dedicating those paragraphs of the song to me. Those exact words. I still can't explain what impacted me the most. Maybe I was going through a great identity crisis, and so that's why it touched me. Or maybe it was the first time that somebody truly observed me. I had been invisible until then. I must have been 14, 15 years old, but I was invisible. This gentleman was named Luis Tolosa, and I still remember him as the man who was able to see me, who was able to look me in the eyes for the first time and discover that there was a crisis, that there was tribulation in my eyes. The old patriarch Abraham also lived this moment in which the crisis sneaked into his eyes through his gaze. Maybe the story is very well known, but it's good to remember that one day God spoke with his friend, the only prophet that God called his friend. And he gave him an order that lacks all common sense. It doesn't resist analysis. He says, God says, take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and I want you to go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will show you. I want you to kill him there. The God of love asking for a human sacrifice. God wasn't like the gods of Olympus or the Greek gods that we would get to know later, asking for human offerings or sacrifices. That's not the God that Abraham served. And let me clarify, there is no way to make this story sound better than what it actually is. There is no way to give this story a spiritual tone so that it can sound like an epiphany. So there are two optics through which we can tell the story. One of them is if you've never had children, you're going to hear the story in a certain way. Why? Because I'm not discounting those that don't have children, but if that's the case, this story is going to seem epic, and it's not wrong. Now, if you're a parent, if you're a father, you can't help but not get involved. This goes for both audiences, those that have children, those that don't. This is a thriller. It's the only thriller that I find, not Michael Jackson's Thriller, I mean as a cinematographer, as a cinema genre. It has a plot with a lot of unexpected twists and turns. That's what a thriller is. It seems like a suspense novel, but the truth is it's a true story. I always say it's been my favorite message because it also produces a strange mixture of fascination, of empathy, pain. A priori, it horrifies me to know that one thing changed Abraham's life as he had known it. A son that he had been given in his old age. Isaac arrived when he was 100 years old, and his wife Sarah was about 90, and she was barren. She wasn't at an age to conceive children, but that son arrived as a miracle. But now God is asking for that miracle through human sacrifice. And that's how you assume crises come unexpectedly. They're intruders. Let's agree, God hasn't asked us to sacrifice our children. The fact that you've had the desire to kill them is different. But sometimes you receive a text message or an audio message that ruins a family lunch or a phone call late into the night. What you thought would be a calm night, you end up in a waiting room or in the ICU. The financial report from our accountant saying, you know what, I got to tell you the truth. We're having problems, or you're having problems, or the medical diagnosis. It seems like it's all getting worse. A sudden accident with someone that we just said goodbye to yesterday, and you say, there's no way, it's unfair. The eyes of a friend that can't tell us the truth, and they tell us to please sit down before they tell us the bitter and tragic news. Notification of a lawsuit, something that you weren't expecting, but now you're in the labyrinth of the courts and lawyers, or the final notice from a creditor saying, we can't wait any longer, we're going to cancel the mortgage. Or a drunk driver, because they drove under the influence, they reduce our family down to just a memory or a portrait. The call from our lawyer, man, I've been through that. I loved the lawyer because he was my friend, but I hated when he called me because he never called me to talk about soccer or Messi. It was always to talk about how the trial was going, how the lawsuit was going. But those minutes are few, but they can create a crack. It's a point of inflection for the tranquility of our soul. And the way those crises are, you can't share them with many people. Most likely, we don't share them with anyone because, after all, who's going to understand exactly what we're going through? They tend to be strictly personal trials, private. They fill us with shame if a child is involved in drugs. We try and say as little as possible to the people around us. We try and hide it. If we come to the temple and say, you know what, no, everything's fine. I trust in God. I have faith. We're almost afraid to share what's happening with us because we think that that'll give it more strength to the misfortune. That's why Abraham doesn't tell his wife when God tells him, you have to sacrifice your son. I don't think he tells his wife. The Bible doesn't shed light on whether or not he does, but I dare to think that if the Bible doesn't say it, it's because he didn't tell her. And we shouldn't blame him. It's not a lack of dialogue. It's just, there's no way to make this sound good. Sarah, the Lord just asked me to sacrifice our child tomorrow morning, but don't worry about it. It's just, they're routine orders. No, there's no way to make that sound good. Cancel the school plans for tomorrow. We have to kill the boy tomorrow. It's an order from God. There's no way. There's no way to make that sound spiritual. Even if you use a deep voice for Sarah to say, yes, Lord, we'll obey. No, there's no way to plant this idea. There's no explanation. There's no rationality in it. There's no point in debating it. Because she would say, why are you crazy? I think you're a senile old man. I think the devil spoke to you, not God. And so maybe if Abraham said, I have to sacrifice my mother, she would be happy and she would say, yes, that's God. But no, not the boy. And in these trials, we feel so alone that sometimes we don't even have someone to share this burden with. It appears as if no one was there to defend you when that stepfather or that uncle or that neighbor or that close friend abused your innocence and took the most precious thing you had when you were just a little girl or just a little boy. These are marks that remain forever, and then you're a part of a statistic. And I always say, not even that, because in order to be a statistic, you have to denounce it, and generally, some of us come from generations where those things weren't spoken about, so that you didn't have problems with the family because it would be a scandal. Someone must have said something when he abandoned you without saying goodbye, without telling you where he was going. Your mother should have defended you from the abuser, or at least asked you why you were living as a little girl with sad eyes. But you collect that bitterness, that pain, that resentment of saying, why did I have to go through that alone? Through each trial, the same phrase appears. They should have, they could have said, they could have done something. And for that reason, I think the worst moment for Abraham was the night of the day in which God gave him the order. I don't know at what time the order from God came to Abraham. Kill your son. I want you to go to a mountain. I want you to go to the land of Moriah and kill him there. But I don't know at what point in the day he gave him the order. But I can imagine what that night must have been like, because we've all had an eternal night where we couldn't get any shut-eye. Without a doubt, no matter what country we were born in, what culture we're a part of, or our academic preparation, we've all had an eternal night, a dark night in our soul. The night of the day in which you weren't corresponded in love, the day you failed the test, the day you didn't qualify or you got rejected on your college application, the day you began to realize that your partner was a little more distant and they began to close off their hearts. So I'm talking about that moment in which the fatigue is demolishing. It's devastating. Your body's asking for rest, but your mind doesn't give you a ceasefire. We're far too worried to forget about it all. There aren't any pills, there's no tea, there's no warm milk that can help us reconcile our sleep. We're too burdened to hug our pillow and just rest. We can all allow ourselves a night of mourning. They say that mourning is a part of the process when you lose someone, but we can't live as if your life remained in that eternal night and you never wake up. We can't be stagnant there. Let's remember that when God gives Abraham the order of sacrificing his son, imagine if he went into a depression where he didn't want to get out of bed the next morning. Sarah says, "Hey, old man, are you going to get out of bed?" No, what God told me late yesterday doesn't make sense. I'm going to stay here. He had hundreds of reasons to not want to wake up the next morning. Maybe some of us would have locked ourselves in to pray, at least, or we would try and negotiate a plan B with God, a second option, an alternative. Or maybe we would even stay in our pajamas without showering, ruminating on the crisis, turning it upside down over and over again. Many times we do that. Ruminate is what cows do with grass, and some of you with burgers, but generally speaking, cows with grass. It's when you read and reread and reread the medical diagnosis once and again, as if something's going to change. And we learn it by memory, the words of those that offended us. And he told me this, and how dare he say this? This is the phrase he used, and we repeat it. We listen to the audio, or we see the video again in our mind of when they disrespected us, when they hurt us. I can tell you so much about that because I'm very imaginative, I'm a visionary, and I've battled against that for a great part of my life. When something hurts me, I sometimes try and see the details again and see how it happened, and I'm like a victim, like Puss in Boots, like the cat in Boots. That's when you make the worst night of your soul eternal. What should only be one night or 2 nights, then become months or years. Of course, this isn't what happened with Abraham. Abraham woke up very early. He tells his young son that we assume must have been 11 or 12 years old. We know this because later we've realized he carries things on his back, and a little baby couldn't do that, so we assume he's 11 or 12 years old. So Abraham tells Isaac, "Come with me, we're going to give an offering to Jehovah." And the boy doesn't think much of it. He says, "Yeah, it's a day out with Dad, I like it." The place where God sends them is 3 days away, 3 days and 3 nights away. There aren't any trains, no planes, no buses. They have to walk there. And it's precisely during that walk, during that journey, that something begins to occur. In parallel, but in the cosmos. When I once preached this, people asked me, "Well, how do you know this happened in heaven?" And my answer is, well, it could have happened, but what gives me credibility to say this is that I've been through many crises, and I know this is what happens in heaven. In heaven, from when Abraham goes out with his son on this 3-day journey to Mount Moriah, I'm talking about the module of mortals, not in the module of time in heaven. It's very different to ours. I don't know how it is, but it's different. In the module of time of mortals, there's atypical movement going on. News that the patriarch Abraham has to sacrifice his beloved son came like a cold bucket of water to the angels. They couldn't believe it. Some were in shock. They can't believe that God gave his friend that order. There are two specifically that are shocked. According to theologians, they could have been angels with Hispanic blood. Warriors, worrisome, Gabriel and Michael. So Gabriel says, this is strange, very, very strange. So God, the one that gave this prophet this son in his old age, we were witnesses when God said, don't laugh, Sarah, because you'll give birth to a son. And she named that son Isaac, which means laughter. That boy is those old people's laughter, and now he has to kill him? And Michael says, you think it's weird? It's so weird. No way. Because he was an urban angel. No way. Get out of here. From what we know, the other angel says, from that son, there would be many, many millions of descendants. We heard a promise from God that God would make a huge nation from that boy. And the angel asks, maybe Abraham made a mistake and ruined it all? Maybe we were in a mission and we didn't see it. But maybe God who sees it all, maybe he saw Abraham mess up. No, as far as I know, I don't think so. There aren't any registries here in heaven that the old guy Abraham did something that displeased the all-powerful God. But on the surface of the earth, the small caravan with the man, 2 servants, 2 helpers, and the young boy, they arrive at their destination. Mount Moriah, after 3 days, emerges as an enormous giant in a barren valley. The wind blows endlessly. Abraham knows that what's about to happen, he has to do privately with his son. His son can be the only witness. He doesn't want anyone else to see what's about to happen. So he tells his servants, you know what, you've made it this far. I'll continue alone with my son. One of the servants says, you sure, boss? You don't need help? If not, send us and we'll help. Historians say that this servant must have been Mexican. You sure, boss? While he was untying the firewood, Abraham says, let the boy carry the firewood. He's strong enough. We won't take too long. We'll worship and we'll be back. And it's always fascinated me, that phrase that Abraham said, we'll worship and we'll return. He keeps the plural. He knows that his son is going to die on the summit of the mountain according to God's orders, but he says, we'll worship and we'll return. The angels are recording this moment in their memory. They're watching everything that happens. In about 1,000 years, they'll see another young man go up on this mountain in sacrifice, but with 2 different meanings. This young man who will come 1,000 years later will not be 12 years old, he'll be 33 years old, and instead of carrying firewood, he'll carry a cross. So they try and record that moment. It's the first impactful moment in heaven. And each step to the summit seemed as if bunches of lead were being encrusted in his old legs. The man doesn't go up the mountain as if he were an athlete. He's an old man. He's 112 years old, or 113 or 114, no less than that. He's extenuated. He's exhausted. Not just because of the 3-day journey, because that's a long trip, but also because of the emotional burden that distresses his heart. That's what crisis produces. When you're having a problem, you have eternal tiredness that you can't cure with 8 hours of sleep or medication or a spa or yoga classes. What cures the tiredness of your soul is something very distinct to normal rest. We'll speak about that in just a moment, but the truth is that Abraham feels exhausted, and this is the last part of the journey. He doesn't stop meditating. He left his home 3 days ago, and now he's about to arrive. Deep down inside, when we're in the middle of a crisis, We ask ourselves what Abraham asked himself. If God is going to intervene, if he's going to change the orders, because it's fine. When we first receive a bad diagnosis, you say, well, this might just be a test or a trial. But in the end, God will change it. I'm sure the next analysis will be the complete opposite to this. It's fine. My child is going through a difficult moment, but I know next month or next year, everything will be different. But for some reason, we tend to ask ourselves as parents, why they have to go through 4 days of intense fever, and then God can finally heal them. Can't he do it quicker? Why do we have to wait anxiously for a tardy resolution of that lawsuit that's been taking your peace? And it seems like all the paperwork has stopped. Nothing fixes itself. You think, God has already told me that I'm going to be free, that I have his favor. Others ask themselves, why didn't the love of my life appear years ago? Now I wouldn't be stuck with this fool. And sometimes we feel that the clock, or God's clock, is running late. But something special is happening in heaven. For some reason, rumor has spread amongst the angels. Because amongst the angels, like the line here in the morning, the rumors spread quickly. The good rumors, as it happens here. And Michael and Gabriel are not alone. There are dozens more. 7 or 8 other angels that are worried and intrigued, asking, what's going on? What's happening? No. The all-powerful God has never ordered a mortal to do something like this. This is singular. Gabriel says, this is a case that has no precedence. This has never happened. Gabriel insists, I think we should ask. What do you mean we should ask? Michael says, really? What are you saying, Gabby? They were comfortable with one another. Nothing, Miguel. Nothing, Mike. I'm just saying we should ask. What? You're telling me you think we should go to God and ask him, Lord, we want to know what you're doing here. Are you all right in your head, or is your halo on too tight? You should know that there are things that us angels don't know. What do we care? You think God has to explain to us? Gabriel says, no, I'm not trying to say it like that. I want to know what's happening. We can go with humility. We can send a delegate so that he can ask the Lord in respects to what's happening with Abraham. He might just say, what do you guys care? And we won't lose anything. But he'll say, you'll know in its time, or you'll never know. I don't see it too complex. And as a delegate, I don't see anyone better than you, Mike. You should hurry, because the prophet is on his way to the peak of the mountain. God's white throne, majestic, in the midst of a superior choir of angels, baritones, the best tenors that the universe has given. There's an indescribable light that fills the room, shining on the Father on his white throne, and in that rigorous silence, God is contemplating the patriarch in detail. He is contemplating the old man's walk along with his son. And that's where Michael goes to the big white throne of the Lord. Lord, all-powerful. Look, you know what? Forget it. Sorry. Bad idea. No, what's going on? You don't have to answer if you don't want, but it just so happens that, the angels over there have a small doubt, and I wasn't too interested, but they chose me to come speak. Maybe you can dissipate our doubts. I can hear God laughing. He doesn't take his eyes off the mountain. I think the chuckles heard throughout heaven, because obviously God knows what Michael came to ask him. But I think he says something like, tell the rest that they have nothing to worry about. It's just a crisis. It's a trial of my servant's faithfulness, and I will not allow him to harm the boy. Oh, Michael. His wings relaxed. He felt that his heart came back to the right spot. A crisis. That's it. It's just a test. It's just a test. It's just a test. Michael immediately spreads the word. Everyone is calm. Hey, guys, false alarm. It's just a test. God is in control. He's not even upset with Abraham. He said it's just a trial. And as he always tends to say, he will not put a burden greater than what his children can carry. It's marvelous. What's more, along with the trial, he will give the exit. And Gabriel asks, do you know what the exit from this is? No, no clue, but there's an exit. God has it. However, Michael feels some trust and he asks again, Lord, you're just trying to prove if the patriarch is capable of sacrificing his son? Is that it? God says, no, of course not. No, it's not that. I never doubted that he would give me his son. He's been walking on that earth for 3 days now, on his way to sacrifice. So then what is it? Well, it's just about what he'll do up next. I've waited for this moment for more than 112 years. The angels take a deep sigh of relief. They don't know what God is waiting for, but at this point, 200 of them are observing profoundly what's about to happen on Mount Moriah. Now there are 200 angels. Stay here, Michael, God says, and I'll tell you when you should let my friend know that he should not kill his son. Woo! Imagine the angel hearing that phrase, because just because he was the delegate, now he is going to be the communicator of the news. He is in charge of telling Abraham that he should not kill his son as soon as God gives Michael the order. Meanwhile, on the surface of the earth, the wind continues to blow strongly. The elevation makes the oxygen thin. It's the summit of Mount Moriah. Abraham's silhouette can be seen on the horizon. He's supporting himself on his arched cane. He just arrived, very fatigued, to the highest part of the mountain, and he lacks oxygen, he lacks air. He's aware that he can't extend this agony for much longer. It's been 3 days and 3 nights of travel. So he knows that it's time to build an altar. If there's going to be a sacrifice, there has to be an altar. And so the altar is built with large stones down below, medium stones in the middle, and smaller stones up above. It's almost like a flat bed where you would place, in theory, a lamb and then sacrifice it. So the man will be in charge of the larger stones, and he tells the young boy to carry the smaller stones. Young boy, help me. We're going to build this altar. And while the old man lifts an enormous stone, he carries each stone over to the altar. He feels that God is further and further from what he's used to. And that's what we feel when we're working hard during the week. And the situation doesn't change. He's carrying the stones, and he believes that the Creator, for some reason, has decided to ignore him arbitrarily. Meanwhile, his young boy whistles while he carries the small and medium stones. But he has a stone in his hands and in his heart. That bitter sensation of feeling alone in the middle of nothing. That hunch that you feel when you know that you're working hard. It's as much as you can do, and you feel that God is further than ever. And he also believes that after this last stone that corresponds to him, it's getting closer for him to tell the young boy. For 3 days, the old man has been meditating what words he can use to tell the young boy. How can he tell him that he has to kill him? And especially when that murder is in the name of God. Homicide is homicide. Whether it be for religious reasons, whether it be for reasons because of an epiphany from God. Homicide is homicide. There's no way to make it sound good. He's also thought a lot about Sarah, his wife. The boy's mother, how will he tell her? He's not sure that she'll understand it too easily. Maybe she'll complain because he didn't tell her. She'll say, hey, I thought we were a team. I thought we were in this together. It's not just your son, it's our son. Maybe Sarah might say something like, I wish I would have been there in my son's last moments at least, but Abraham knows that that would make the agony worse or longer. But we can't judge Abraham too quickly. Abraham's not used to these transactions. He doesn't kill children periodically. 112 years of life couldn't prepare him for this precise moment. So Abraham says, Isaac, come here. We have to speak. And the young boy is intelligent and eager, but he knows something's wrong. He's been suspecting it for days, and he thinks he knows what it's about. And so I think the young boy speaks first, and he says, no, Dad, you don't have to speak. I know what you're about to say to me. And honestly, I understand it, and I can understand it. The old prophet is terrified, mute. He puts his hand on his heart, and he looks for a big stone to sit on. I hope this is quick because I can't spend too much time like this. While the young boy continues smiling, he says, no, really, Dad. It seems as if nothing tragic is happening in the boy's eyes. I think Abraham, seated on that stone, he must be thinking, did God already deal with his heart in these 3 days? Son, you're telling me that you knew the whole time what's happening or what's about to happen? Abraham asks incredulously, not believing what his son just said, and his son Isaac says, yes, of course. You're Dad, and you always try and have everything under control, but I always knew something was wrong. But really, I don't mind. I know you forgot about the lamb. I can go get one. Really? And when I asked you, you said God will provide. All right, he didn't provide. It's fine. Doesn't matter. I can go look for one now. There's some at the bottom of the mountain. It's no trouble. No, son. No, Dad, it's no trouble at all. Son, no. Abraham tries to smile, but he can't. It's not about a problem of bad memory, son. I'm old, but I'm not senile. I would never forget a lamb, much less if it's a sacrifice to Jehovah. You know that I've always tried to have all the answers, and I don't want you to ask anything, but just listen to what I'm about to say, yeah? The young boy is petrified. He's never seen his father so serious, so confounded, and Abraham opens his mouth. Well, but he can't find the adequate words. Those of us that are parents know that there aren't any adequate words for this. Because when it's about killing a child, there are no words that can articulate that. No vocabulary in the world has these words. Either way, the boy has already read the father's eyes. He knows he's in a crisis because his eyes say so. So no words are needed. You're going to kill me? The man only looks at him without answering. And in that way, he answered. And both embrace each other in silence. I can't see who took initiative. Maybe it was the boy who leapt into the father's arms, but with that type of news, I think it might have been Abraham who brought him in close. Whoever started that embrace, this embrace just moved the heavens. Now Gabriel is desperate. He's anxious up there. Behind him, it's no longer a dozen angels. There are hundreds. No, sorry, 1,500 spectators that are flapping their wings. And they're watching what's happening on the surface of the earth. But meanwhile, God continues observing that embrace, that scene, as if he didn't want to miss a single movement from his friend. It's as if he's watching a great movie and he doesn't want to miss a second. Michael says, God all-powerful, please let me come down. Let me go down. Please, he's going to kill his son. He's going to kill him, and I won't make it. I was calculating the distance, and I won't make it. And the all-powerful doesn't lose his calm and he says, no, not yet. I know what my friend's limit is. I'm sure he can stand it a little while longer. I know what type of wood Abraham is made of. Even so, he hasn't done what I've been waiting more than 100 years for. Abraham knows that the young boy hasn't resisted, nor will he resist, but he also knows that his own natural instincts can betray him. So he brings out a rope from his improvised luggage and he asks Isaac to join his wrists and his small ankles to tie him up. The boy obeys while he sobs in silence and the father ties him. The boy might say something like, Dad, it's not necessary. Yeah, I know. This isn't the fun day in the field that he thought he would spend his dad with. And though he's only 12 years old, he already had his own plans. On his way back home, he wanted to draw something for his mother, and if he didn't get home too late, maybe observe the comets in the heavens. Maybe he had a project for the next weekend with his friends. Anything but dying. Dying was not in his plans, and much less at the hands of his father. And Abraham isn't having a better time. Let's stop and think about the way in which he was tying up the young boy. It's the most difficult knot he's ever tied. And we really think that he's too old to tie a tight knot with someone that's trying to resist. No, it's not his old age. This man has tied hundreds of rebellious lambs that weren't willing to be assassinated. If he's taking long to tie the knot, it's because he imagines that maybe he's buying time and he'll hear another order from heaven. I don't know. Maybe a twist in the plot. A voice that says it was all a bad joke or a hidden camera somewhere. Now there's a revolution in heaven. There are 3,000 angels contemplating the frame. And if you pay attention, we'll hear continuous murmuring. All the angels are speaking amongst one another, asking themselves if Michael is going to make it, if he's not late, if he's delayed. Does God realize that with each minute that goes by, the young boy's life is in danger? So somebody asks, shouldn't Michael go down now? Shouldn't he get closer? And Michael asks God again, Lord, all-powerful, don't you think it'd be better for me to just go down now? No, don't even think about it. The Lord answers, my servant can handle a little more. The more he handles, the more blessings I will give him. My servant can handle a greater limited situation. And now Isaac is tied up on the surface of the earth. Now his father, once he ties him, he carries him up as if he were a baby. And he deposits him on the altar. The boy hasn't stopped crying bitterly. Son, the old man says, my little boy, if you want to say something to me, I think this is the moment to say goodbye. But let's make it easy, Don't make it difficult on me. I've always had doubts about what the young boy's final words might have been. I don't know what he might have said. What do you say when your father is about to kill you? The person that should protect you and contain you is now your assassin, and the God that your father serves is the intellectual author of the crime. What can you say? But I go into the mind of an 11 or 12-year-old boy, and he might have said something like, I can't forgive that you didn't tell me when we left home. I didn't say goodbye to Mom. Not the way she likes it. I gave her a half kiss while she was asleep. I miss her. I wish you were here. The young boy's words end up breaking the man. He can no longer pretend that he has everything under control. It's impossible to see a boy with tears in his eyes, tied up on an altar. At this point, there are thousands of angels contemplating it all. Michael is so afraid. He said, God's going to kill him. God, he's going to kill him. He's going to kill him. Please let me go down. I won't make it, please. I've been thinking about it. I won't make it on time. And God says, you'll make it. Be calm. You'll make it. My friend can handle a little bit more. And now the man lights a fire. The altar is there with his son tied on top of it. And he heats the blade in the flames. If there's something that this man knows, it's that his son should suffer the least amount possible. So he must do it quickly in an expedited way. So that's why he heats the blade. It'll make the sacrifice pragmatic. The tears of a man who got to know 1,000 deserts seem like the eyes of a young boy that doesn't know where to run to. And he dedicates these last moments while he heats the blade. He dedicates those final moments to mortifying himself even more. He thinks about the empty room that used to be Isaac's. He thinks about Sarah, the way in which he'll have to tell her. He knows that they'll never be the same after this. Most likely, they'll get a divorce. Too much pain to try and be happy again and ignore it and pretend it didn't happen. He feels that a piece of him will die along with the young boy, and that he'll breathe the breath of death, and that he'll remember this moment with each breath left in his life. He'll be a dead man walking. And of course, what any parent would say, I would take his place. Tell me I can take his place. I would do it. I would do it with all the pleasure in the world. We've said it when we watch our children suffer. Parents have said it when a child is going through cancer or leukemia. Please let me take their place. Abraham considers that it might have been better to not have a son. Yeah, if he could choose all over again, to rewind his life and choose a barren wife, a barren womb, or have this child, he would choose the first option. To have never known Isaac. No, God can't fill a crib to then empty it. God can't promise you a child, fill the home with laughter and joy to then later take it from you. So while he's immersed in his thoughts, heating up the blade of the knife, the boy who's over here says, Dad! He can't see his dad because he's laying down and he can't see him. He says, Dad! Dad! The boy's shouts abruptly interrupt Abraham's thoughts. The boy says, Dad! Dad! And with each shout from the boy, God begins to get up from his white throne. But he does it slowly, like a citizen that hears the first notes of their national anthem. The Lord stands, and more than 10,000 angels take several steps back. God is on his feet, while the boy says, Dad! Daddy! The prophet doesn't want to hear his son. He doesn't want to hear him, but not because he doesn't love him, not because he doesn't care for him. He just doesn't want this agony to extend. The boy insists, Dad, we forgot about something, and he implores desperately. The man ignores it. He fears the worst. What if his son says, please untie me, I don't want to die tied? What if he says, no, I'm not willing to die? Or maybe he asks him, most likely he asks for the opportunity to say goodbye to his mother. This would extend the agony at least another week. 3 days and 3 nights to go see mom, and then 3 days and 3 nights to come back with mom against it all. No, that's not a good idea. So he thinks, please let him be quiet. And he pretends that the wind doesn't let him hear. He doesn't want to be between the sword and the wall, and that's when God speaks. But not in the way that we might be thinking. God still doesn't allow Abraham to hear his voice. His voice doesn't cross into earth. He only mentions a phrase that I think can be heard throughout all heaven. Let's go, Abraham. Listen to your son. Do the right thing. I've waited for this moment for a long time. And Michael says, please let me go down. Please, let me. No, this is the home stretch. I need to go. I'm not going to make it. He's going to kill him. And instead of this being a test, it's going to be a tragedy. You're wrong. The best part is yet to come. My servant can handle a little bit more, but I have been waiting for this, the Creator says. Come on, Isaac, insist a little bit more. Come on, your father has to hear you. And though the boy shouts and screams mixed with the sound of the wind, the father knows that he can't ignore him much longer, not if he insists. Dad! Dad! So, irately, he deposits his blade into the firewood and he comes close to his boy. Dad! What? You're going to kill me, right? I wouldn't say it that way. It's an offering to Jehovah. All right, but we haven't worshipped. You said we would worship and return. You promised that we would worship, and we haven't sang a single song. Imagine that. You can tell that this immature boy, this immature child, life didn't have enough time to teach him when you should sing. Abraham would love to teach him when an adult should worship. Maybe this is the moment to give them that clarification. First of all, this isn't the place, this isn't the time to sing. You sing during Sunday services when you are wearing your best perfume and your best clothes, when you know they're observing you. Maybe you sing when you're in the choir, or when you direct or lead worship, or when they're recording you, or when you pose for the pictures. It's also good to do it during a night of celebration, a worship night. But little Isaac, a mature adult, doesn't sing during the burial of a loved one. You don't sing after you see the negative analysis from the medical checkup, or if it's positive in the case of cancer.